The ships appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning. They were massive, blocking out the sun over major cities across the planet. People stopped in the streets and stared upward. Some screamed, others fell to their knees. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. Taman stood in the emergency meeting room in Geneva, watching the news feeds from around the world. He was Earth's lead ambassador, a position he had held for 12 years. He had negotiated peace between nations, prevented wars, and brought enemies to the same table. But this was different. This was first contact with alien life. The message came 3 hours after the ships arrived. It was broadcast in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, and dozens of other languages. The voice was cold and mechanical. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Collective. We come to invite you into our civilization. Send your representatives to meet us. Taman was chosen to lead the delegation. He selected his team carefully: scientists, military advisors, linguists, and cultural experts. Among them was Captain Yuna, a decorated officer who commanded Earth's newest spacecraft, the UES Horizon. She would provide security and transport for the diplomatic mission. The meeting took place on the largest alien vessel, a ship the size of a small city. Taman and his team were escorted through gleaming corridors filled with technology beyond human understanding. They passed aliens of different species, some walking on 2 legs, others floating, some covered in scales, others in fur or feathers. The council chamber was enormous. 12 species sat in a circle, each represented by their leaders. At the center were the Vorath, tall reptilian beings with dark green skin and golden eyes. Their commander, Threllox, gestured for the humans to approach. Taman stepped forward with confidence he did not entirely feel. On behalf of humanity, we thank you for this opportunity. We come in peace, hoping to learn from you and share what we know. Threllox's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. How quaint. Yes, you will learn much from us. You will also contribute much to the collective. Over the next weeks, Taman and his team attended countless meetings. They learned about the Galactic Collective, an alliance of species that controlled thousands of worlds. They learned about trade routes, laws, and the structure of galactic civilization. But Taman noticed something troubling. Every agreement the collective offered seemed to benefit them far more than humanity. Yuna noticed it too. She attended the meetings silently, observing. One evening, as they returned to the horizon, she spoke to Taman privately. "Sir, something feels wrong. The way they look at us, the way they speak. They treat us like children, or worse, like resources to be used." Taman nodded slowly. "I've felt it too. But we must be patient. We're new to this. Perhaps this is simply how things work out here." Dr. Hyun-woo, the lead scientist on the team, was busy analyzing everything he could learn about collective technology. He spent his days studying their databases, asking questions, and making detailed notes. Late one night, he came to Taman's quarters with a worried expression. "I found something disturbing," Hyun-woo said, spreading data across a screen. "I've been looking at the history of species that joined the collective. 12 species refused their initial offers in the past century. 11 of them experienced major conflicts within 10 years. Rebellions, civil wars, mysterious attacks from neighboring systems. Only one survived as an independent civilization, and they're barely holding on." Taman felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying the collective manufactures these conflicts?" "I'm saying the pattern is too consistent to be coincidence," Hyun-woo replied. "Species that refuse them don't do well." The formal offer came 2 months after first contact. Threllox presented it with great ceremony. The terms were clear. Earth would provide 40% of its resources to the collective. Human governments would accept collective oversight on all major decisions. Earth would also provide 1 million volunteers for the collective's military forces to help patrol their borders and fight their wars. In exchange, humanity would receive protection, technology, and a place in galactic civilization. Taman read the document 3 times. He consulted with his team, with Earth's leaders, with legal experts. The conclusion was always the same. The deal was terrible. It would effectively make Earth a colony, not a partner. Back on Earth, Defense Minister Nari was already taking action. She had been reading the same reports Hyunwoo provided. She quietly began moving resources, establishing emergency protocols, and accelerating several classified military programs. If the collective responded to rejection with force, Earth needed to be ready. Taman negotiated for 2 years. He proposed alternative terms. He suggested compromises. He pleaded for fairness. The collective made minor adjustments, but always came back to the same basic demands. They wanted Earth's resources, Earth's people, and Earth's obedience. Captain Yuna watched Taman age during those 2 years. The stress was visible on his face, but he never gave up trying to find a peaceful solution. She admired his dedication, even as she prepared her own contingency plans. She trained her crew harder. She studied collective military vessels whenever she could observe them. She learned their patterns, their technologies, their weaknesses. Finally, the day came when Taman had to deliver Earth's answer. He stood before the collective council once more, his team behind him. Every human on Earth was watching. Every nation had voted. The decision was unanimous. The people of Earth thank the Galactic Collective for their offer, Taman said, his voice steady and clear. But we must respectfully decline. The terms you propose do not represent a partnership of equals. They represent subjugation. Humanity did not reach the stars to become servants. We came to be friends, allies, partners. If you cannot offer us that, then we will remain independent. The chamber fell silent. The representatives of 12 species stared at the humans. Some looked surprised. Others looked angry. Threllox's golden eyes narrowed. "You refuse?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "We refuse these terms," Taman confirmed. "But our door remains open for fair negotiations. We still hope for peace and friendship between our peoples." Threllox stood slowly, his full height towering over the humans. "No species refuses the collective. You are young and foolish. You do not understand the universe you live in. There are dangers out here, human. Pirates, raiders, hostile empires. Without our protection, you are vulnerable." Taman met his gaze without flinching. "Then we will face those dangers as a free people. We would rather take our chances in an uncertain universe than surrender our freedom for the illusion of safety." The collective council rose as one. Threllox pointed a clawed finger at Taman. "You have made a grave mistake. Refusal has consequences. Consider this carefully. We will give you 1 month to reconsider. After that, we will do what we must to maintain order in this sector." The threat was clear. Yuna's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm, though she knew it would be useless here. Taman simply nodded. "We understand. Our answer will be the same in 1 month. Humanity chooses freedom." The humans were escorted back to their ship quickly, almost roughly. As the horizon departed from the collective fleet, Yuna looked at the massive vessels surrounding them. She felt small and vulnerable, but she also felt something else: determination. Taman sent a message to Earth as soon as they were clear. "Prepare for the worst. They will come. We have 1 month." On Earth, Nari received the message and activated protocols that had been waiting for 2 years. Factories increased production. Military forces mobilized. Scientists worked around the clock. Every human on Earth knew what was coming. The month passed in frantic preparation, and on the 31st day, The collective fleet entered Earth's solar system. 200 warships, enough to destroy any resistance. They expected humanity to surrender immediately. They expected fear and submission. They were about to learn their first lesson about humans. When pushed to the edge, when given no choice, humanity did not surrender. They fought. The alarms started at 3 in the morning, Earth time. 200 collective warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. They moved in perfect formation, heading straight for Mars, humanity's largest off-world colony. Commander Donghae was already awake when the alarm sounded. He had not slept well since the diplomatic talks failed. He commanded the defense forces on Mars, protecting nearly 2 million colonists who had made the Red Planet their home. He ran to the command center, pulling on his uniform as he went. The screens showed the approaching fleet. They were massive ships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single weapon. Donghae's forces consisted of 40 defense satellites, 12 patrol ships, and a network of ground-based weapons. It was not nearly enough. "All personnel to battle stations," Donghae ordered, his voice calm despite the fear in his chest. "Begin evacuation protocols for non-essential civilians. Get everyone to the underground shelters." Mars had been preparing for this moment. The month of warning had allowed them to dig deeper, reinforce structures, and store supplies. But preparation could only do so much against such overwhelming force. The collective fleet did not bother with warnings or demands. They opened fire immediately. Bright beams of energy lanced down from orbit, striking the largest settlements. Dome structures that had taken years to build exploded in seconds. Thousands died in the first 5 minutes. Donghae's defense satellites fought back, firing missiles and energy weapons at the attacking ships. They managed to damage 3 vessels before the collective destroyed every single satellite. The patrol ships lasted slightly longer, using hit-and-run tactics to annoy the enemy. But one by one, they were hunted down and eliminated. The bombardment continued for hours. The collective was not trying to destroy Mars completely. They were sending a message. They targeted population centers, communication hubs, and industrial facilities. They wanted humanity to feel pain, to feel helpless, to surrender. In the underground shelters, families huddled together as explosions shook the ground above them. Children cried. Parents tried to comfort them with words they did not believe themselves. Donghae watched the casualty reports climbing and felt rage building inside him. These were not military targets. These were homes, schools, hospitals. Back on Earth, the world watched in horror. News broadcasts showed the destruction in real time. The collective made sure everyone could see. They wanted Earth to know what happened to those who refused them. Ambassador Taman worked desperately from his office in Geneva. He sent messages to every species in the collective, pleading for intervention. He contacted neutral civilizations, begging for mediation. He offered new negotiations, new terms, anything to stop the killing. Every message was ignored or rejected. Some species sent polite refusals. Others did not bother to respond at all. The message was clear. The galaxy would not help humanity. Some species feared the collective's power. Others simply did not care about the fate of one young civilization. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, engineer Jiwoo was working in a secret facility buried under kilometers of ice. She had been part of Earth's emergency response team, developing weapons and defenses that might give humanity a chance. The projects were desperate, experimental, and dangerous. But they were also humanity's best hope. Jiwoo had not slept in 3 days. Her team was racing against time to complete their work. They were developing new propulsion systems, new weapons, and new defensive technologies. Everything was based on stolen and reverse-engineered collective technology, improved with human innovation and desperation. "How much longer?" asked her supervisor over the communication link. Jiwoo looked at her calculations. 6 months for full deployment, Maybe 4 if we skip some safety tests. You have 2 months, the supervisor said. The colonies won't last longer than that. Jiwoo closed her eyes and nodded. Then we skip everything except critical safety. I'll get it done. The attack on Mars lasted 3 days. When it finally ended, half the colony's infrastructure was destroyed. 200,000 people were dead. The survivors emerged from their shelters to find a landscape of ruins, but they were alive, and they were angry. The collective fleet moved on to the asteroid belt next, destroying mining stations and processing facilities. They were methodical and efficient. Every human installation outside Earth was being systematically targeted. On Earth itself, people prepared for invasion. Defense Minister Nari had mobilized every military force. Cities that had not seen soldiers in decades suddenly had troops on every corner. Factories that once made consumer goods now produced weapons and armor. Every able-bodied person received basic military training. But Earth's fleet was still too small. Humanity had 40 capital ships, a few hundred smaller vessels, and planetary defenses. Against the collective's 200 warships and the promise of reinforcements, it seemed hopeless. Admiral Minho commanded Earth's home fleet. He was an old soldier who had fought in the last major war between nations decades ago. He had hoped to retire without seeing another war. Now he faced an enemy from the stars. Minho knew he could not win a direct battle. The collective was too strong, too advanced, too experienced, but he could make them pay for every victory. He could buy time for Earth's scientists and engineers to complete their secret projects. And he could make the collective believe humanity was on the edge of defeat. He ordered his forces to fall back whenever the enemy advanced. He made sure every retreat looked panicked and desperate. He abandoned positions that could have been defended, making it seem like humanity was collapsing. But every retreat was carefully planned. Every abandoned base was stripped of anything useful first. And every victory the collective claimed cost them ships and resources. The collective broadcast their attacks throughout the galaxy. They wanted other species to see what happened to those who refused them. They showed destroyed colonies, burning stations, and desperate human defenders. They narrated each victory with cold satisfaction, but they did not show their own losses. They did not mention the 3 cruisers damaged by human nuclear weapons. They did not talk about the destroyer that disappeared near Saturn, likely destroyed by a minefield. They did not acknowledge that humanity was making them work for every kilometer they advanced. Taemin made his final appeal to the galaxy 6 weeks after the siege began. He broadcast from Earth, standing in front of the United Nations building. His face was tired, aged by stress and grief. But his eyes were still fierce. "People of the galaxy, I speak to you one last time in peace," he said. "The Galactic Collective is destroying our colonies, killing our people, and preparing to invade our homeworld. We tried to join you as equals. We offered friendship, trade, and cooperation. We were rejected because we would not surrender our freedom." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "We have sent 17 requests for mediation. All have been ignored. We have offered new negotiations. All have been refused. It seems the galaxy has decided that humanity is not worth saving, that our freedom is not worth defending, that our lives do not matter." Taemin's expression hardened. "Very well. We understand now. We are alone. We will stand alone. But know this, all of you watching. We tried peace. We begged for justice. We pleaded for mercy. You gave us none of these things." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. "The collective believes they have broken us. They believe we will surrender any day now. They are wrong. Humanity has been tested before, by nature, by disease, by ourselves. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have survived world wars and near-extinction events. We survive because we adapt. We endure because we refuse to give up." The broadcast was being watched across the galaxy on thousands of worlds. Some viewers felt sympathy. Most felt nothing. A few felt a small spark of unease at something in Taemin's voice. "This is Earth's final message to the Galactic Collective and to all who watch," Taemin continued. "We tried peace. You chose war. We offered our hand. You raised your weapons. Now you will see what humanity becomes when you leave us no other choice. Now you will witness what happens when you push us too far." He straightened, his face set in hard lines. "We are not surrendering. We are not begging anymore. We are done asking for mercy. From this moment forward, the collective has declared themselves our enemy, and humanity treats its enemies very differently than it treats its friends." The message ended. Across the collective fleet, commanders laughed at the defiant speech. Thralocs watched it with amusement. "The humans are posturing to save face before they surrender. Pathetic. Prepare for the final assault on Earth. We will end this quickly." But on Europa, Jiwoo's team activated their first completed weapon system. On Earth, Nari gave the signal to begin Phase 2 of the defense plan. In hidden facilities throughout the solar system, projects that had been building in secret for 2 years came online. And in the outer solar system, beyond Neptune, where the collective had not bothered to look carefully, something massive began to move. 500 warships, built in secret, powered up their engines for the first time. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching her fleet come to life. The retreat had been an act. The desperation had been theater. The plea for mercy had been a final test to see if anyone in the galaxy deserved humanity's friendship. No one had passed that test. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn a hard lesson. Humanity had spent 2 years preparing for this war. They had studied their enemy, learned their weaknesses, and built weapons specifically designed to kill collective ships. The siege was about to end, but not in the way the collective expected. The trap was set. The bait had been taken, and now the jaws would close. The sleeping giant was waking up, and it was very, very angry. The collective fleet approached Earth with confidence. They had crushed every human defense they encountered. Mars was burning. The asteroid belt was empty of human presence. Jupiter's moons had been abandoned. Earth seemed alone and helpless. Commander Thraloc stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on his screens. "Prepare landing forces. We will take their capital cities first. Once their leaders surrender, the rest will follow quickly." His officers moved to obey. The fleet arranged itself in bombardment formation, weapons charging for the initial attack that would break Earth's spirit. 200 warships against one planet. It would be over in days. Then the sensors started screaming. "Sir, multiple contacts," the sensor officer said, confusion in his voice. 500 ships, emerging from behind Neptune's orbit." Thraloc spun around. "Impossible. Humans don't have 500 ships. Our intelligence said 40 at most." "Confirmed, sir. 500 ships, all broadcasting human identification codes. They're moving to intercept us." On the bridge of the human flagship, Captain Yuna smiled coldly. She had been waiting 2 years for this moment. "All ships, this is Fleet Command. Activate combat systems. Engage at will. Show them what we built while they thought we were helpless." The Shadow Fleet, as it had been secretly named, surged forward. These were not the clumsy, slow vessels the collective had fought before. These ships were fast, maneuverable, and packed with weapons that the galaxy had never seen used in war. Humanity had studied warfare throughout its history. From ancient battles with swords to modern conflicts with missiles, humans understood violence in ways the civilized collective species did not. The collective fought wars according to rules, traditions, and honor codes developed over thousands of years. Humanity threw out all those rules and focused on one thing: winning. The first wave of human ships released thousands of drones. Small, fast, and expendable, They swarmed the collective vessels like insects. The collective defense systems, designed for fighting other large warships, struggled to target so many small objects. The drones crashed into shields, weapons, and engines. Many were destroyed, but many more got through. Each drone carried a nuclear warhead. The collective had abandoned nuclear weapons centuries ago, considering them primitive and barbaric. They had energy shields that could absorb energy weapon fire and deflect most missiles. But they had not prepared for hundreds of nuclear explosions detonating directly against their hulls. 20 collective ships died in the first minute of battle, torn apart by nuclear fire. 30 more were damaged, their shields overloaded, their armor cracked. "What are they doing?" Threlok shouted, staring at his screens in disbelief. "This is insane. This is not how space combat works." His weapons officer looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, the humans don't seem to know that." The second wave was worse. Human ships accelerated to incredible speeds, far faster than the collective thought possible. As they passed enemy vessels, they released kinetic projectiles. Simple metal rods, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. When they hit with the force of massive bombs. The collective tried to return fire, but the human ships were moving too fast and too erratically. They dodged and weaved in patterns that made no sense, wasting energy and fuel in ways that violated every principle of efficient space combat. But it worked. Most collective weapons missed their fast-moving targets. Dr. Yunwoo watched the battle from his facility on Europa. His weapons were performing even better than expected. The reverse-engineered collective technology, combined with human innovation, was devastating. The nuclear pulse engines allowed incredible acceleration. The kinetic weapons were unstoppable once launched, and they had more surprises ready. "Deploy the hunter-killer packages," Hyunwoo ordered. Throughout the human fleet, missiles launched, but these were not ordinary missiles. They were controlled by advanced artificial intelligence, programmed with one goal: kill enemy ships. They learned from each engagement, adapted their tactics, and coordinated with each other in ways that confused the collective defenders. The collective had strict rules about artificial intelligence in warfare. They considered autonomous weapons dangerous and unethical. Humanity had no such concerns. Every advantage was fair in a fight for survival. Admiral Minho commanded the defense of Earth itself, coordinating with Yuna's fleet. "All planetary defenses. Acquire targets. Fire when ready." Earth's surface lit up with weapons fire. Missile silos that had been built in secret launched their payloads. Orbital platforms that had seemed like civilian stations revealed hidden weapons. The asteroid belt that appeared empty suddenly came alive with rail guns and laser batteries. The collective fleet found itself surrounded, attacked from all directions by an enemy that refused to fight fair. They tried to regroup, to form defensive positions, but the human ships kept moving, kept attacking, kept forcing them to react instead of act. Captain Sunho led the boarding teams. This was another tactic the collective never used. Space battles were fought ship to ship. Boarding was considered barbaric, a relic of primitive warfare. But humans remembered their history of naval combat on Earth's oceans. They knew the value of taking enemy ships intact. Sunho's assault shuttles punched through the weakened shields of a collective cruiser. They clamped onto the hull and burned through the armor. Soldiers in combat suits poured into the alien ship. The collective crew had no experience with close-quarters combat. They were technicians and officers, trained to operate weapons systems and manage ship functions. They had personal weapons, but they had never fought in corridors and rooms. The human soldiers, trained in urban warfare and close combat, moved through the ship like deadly shadows. Within an hour, the cruiser was captured. Its crew was secured, its systems were shut down, and human techs were already downloading every piece of data they could find. Sunho reported success and moved on to the next target. On Mars, Commander Donghae watched the battle through the communication feeds. His colony was in ruins, but his people were alive and ready to fight back. All surviving defense forces, the fleet is here. Prepare to support their attack. Target any collective ships that come within range. The remaining weapons on Mars, hidden during the bombardment, activated. Damaged defense satellites that had played dead suddenly came back online. The collective ships near Mars found themselves under attack from an enemy they thought they had defeated. Across the solar system, the trap closed completely. Every human installation that had seemed destroyed or abandoned suddenly revealed hidden weapons and soldiers. The collective had not been fighting a desperate defense. They had been walking into a carefully prepared ambush. Threllox realized the truth too late. The retreat had been fake. The pleas for mercy had been a distraction. The humans had been preparing this counterstrike since the very beginning. All ships retreat! Get out of this system! We need reinforcements! But retreating was not easy. The human ships were faster, and they blocked the obvious escape routes. The collective fleet tried to fight its way out, but they were disorganized and panicked. Ships collided with each other. Orders were confused. Discipline broke down. Yuna watched the enemy fleet falling apart. Don't let them escape. We end this here. We show the galaxy that attacking humanity has consequences. The battle raged for 6 more hours. It was brutal, violent, and merciless. The humans had learned a lesson from the collective bombardment of Mars. They had seen their civilians killed, their homes destroyed, their mercy rejected. Now they gave the collective the same mercy they had received. None. Of the 200 collective warships that entered the solar system, only 3 escaped. 197 were destroyed or captured. Tens of thousands of alien soldiers and crew were dead. The collective expeditionary force was annihilated. The 3 surviving ships limped back to collective space, carrying the news of their defeat. They brought recordings of the battle, showing the galaxy what had happened. The primitive humans had crushed a collective fleet using tactics and weapons that should not have worked. On Earth, the celebration was brief. The victory was real. But this was only the beginning. The collective would not forgive this defeat. They would send more ships, larger fleets, and they would not underestimate humanity again. Ambassador Taman addressed the planet from the ruins of Geneva, which had been hit by collective bombardment during the battle. His diplomatic compound was destroyed, but he stood in the rubble, unbowed. People of Earth, we have won our first battle, but the war is not over. The collective will return with greater force. We must prepare. We must build more ships, train more soldiers, and develop better weapons. We must also send a message to the galaxy. He looked up at the sky, where the wreckage of collective ships still orbited. We tried peace. They brought war. We offered friendship. They brought destruction. Now they know the cost of making an enemy of humanity. Now the galaxy will learn what happens when you give humans no choice but to fight. Defense Minister Nari stood beside him. We're not waiting for them to come back. We're taking the fight to them. Every world that supported this attack, every species that ignored our pleas for help, every government that watched us suffer and did nothing. They all made their choice. Now we make ours. In orbit, Yuna's fleet was already preparing for the next phase. Engineers repaired damaged ships. Soldiers rested and resupplied. Captured collective vessels were being studied, their technology reverse-engineered even further. The humans were learning, adapting, and improving with terrifying speed. Dr. Hyunwoo received reports from across the solar system. The quantum destabilization weapon is ready for testing. But, sir, if we use this, there's no going back. It's a weapon that violates every treaty the collective has about warfare. The response came from Earth's unified command. The collective violated every law when they murdered our civilians. Prepare the weapon for demonstration. We need the galaxy to understand that we're holding back, that if we wanted to, we could be far worse than they can imagine. The first major battle was over. Humanity had proved they could fight. Now they needed to prove they could win the war. and they needed to make sure the galaxy understood one final lesson. Peace was always humanity's first choice, but war was something humans were very, very good at. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, Admiral Minho led humanity's fleets beyond the solar system for the first time as conquerors. They were not exploring. They were not trading. They were delivering justice. The first target was a mining colony on the edge of Vorath space. This world had supplied materials for the ships that bombed Mars. The local government had cheered when the collective fleet launched toward Earth. Now they watched in terror as human warships appeared in their sky. Minho broadcast a simple message. You supplied the weapons that killed our people. You celebrated our suffering. Now you will face the consequences. You have 2 choices: surrender and pay reparations, or resist and be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide. The colony's leaders debated frantically. Some wanted to fight. Others argued for surrender. In the end, survival won over pride. They surrendered in 40 minutes. Human soldiers landed and took control of the colony, but they did not slaughter civilians. They did not bomb cities. They seized the mining facilities, took control of the shipyards, and arrested the political leaders who had supported the attack on Earth. The civilians were left alone, given food and medical care, and told they could continue their lives under human oversight. It was a message to the galaxy. Humanity could be merciful, but only to those who surrendered. Ambassador Taman had changed. The diplomat who once begged for peace now delivered ultimatums. He appeared before the Galactic Collective Council, broadcasting his message across thousands of worlds. He stood in a military uniform now, not diplomatic robes. The Collective attacked Earth without provocation. You murdered 200,000 of our people. You ignored our pleas for mediation. You watched us suffer and did nothing, Taman said, his voice cold and hard. Now Earth demands justice. Every world that supplied the attack fleet will pay reparations. Every species that refused to help us will face sanctions. Every government that supported the Collective's actions will answer for their choices. The council chamber erupted in outrage. Threlok stood, his scales dark with anger. You dare threaten us? You are 1 species. We are 12. You cannot fight the entire collective. Taman smiled without warmth. We already did. Your expeditionary fleet is destroyed. Your commanders are dead or captured. And we are just getting started. You thought we were weak because we sought peace. Now you will learn that our desire for peace was not weakness. It was mercy. Mercy you rejected. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Threlok's. We gave you every chance to be our friends. You chose to be our enemies. Now you will learn what humanity does to its enemies. In Vorath space, Commander Donghae led the liberation of slave worlds. The Collective controlled dozens of species who had been conquered and forced into servitude. These species mined resources, built ships, and fought in wars they did not choose. The Collective called it integration. Everyone else called it slavery. Donghae's forces arrived at a factory world where a species called the Kelrath had been enslaved for 3 generations. The Vorath guards fled when human ships appeared. Donghae landed with his soldiers and went straight to the largest labor camp. We are humans from Earth, he announced to the confused Kelrath workers. We are at war with the Collective. We offer you a choice. Join us and fight for your freedom, or stay neutral and we will leave you in peace. But we will not leave you under collective control. The Kelrath looked at each other uncertainly. Then an old worker stepped forward. What do you want in return for helping us? Nothing, Donghae said simply. We know what it means to be attacked by a stronger enemy. We know what it means to be alone and helpless. We will not let others suffer what we suffered if we can prevent it. The Kelrath joined humanity that day. So did dozens of other species in the following months. Humanity became a symbol of resistance across the galaxy. The species that had stood alone against the Collective and won was now offering others the chance to do the same. Engineer Ji Woo continued her work, now focused on making human technology available to allies. But she was careful. Humanity shared defensive weapons and medical technology freely. Offensive weapons were shared only with trusted allies, and always with controls that prevented them from being used against humans. "We're not making the same mistake the collective made," Ji Woo explained to her team. "We're not going to create enemies by being generous, but we're also not going to arm everyone and hope for the best. Trust, but verify, always." Her greatest achievement was the mobile factory ships. These vessels could travel to allied worlds and set up production facilities in weeks instead of years. Species that had been defenseless could suddenly build their own defenses. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and the collective was losing control. Captain Yuna led the blockade of the Vorath homeworld. Human ships surrounded the planet, cutting off all trade and communication. No supplies came in, no ships left. The proud empire that had launched the attack on Earth now faced starvation and isolation. Yuna broadcast daily messages to the planet below. "Your leaders chose war. Your commanders murdered our people. Now you face the consequences. Surrender unconditionally, agree to reparations and disarmament, and this blockade ends. Refuse, and watch your civilization collapse." The Vorath government tried to hold out. They sent their remaining military forces to break the blockade. Every attack failed. Human ships were too fast, too well coordinated, and too experienced. The Vorath had been fighting by the rules of civilized warfare. Humanity had written new rules. After 3 months of blockade, the Vorath economy collapsed. Food shortages led to riots. The military turned on the government. And finally, the leaders who had started this war were dragged from their palaces by their own people and presented to the human fleet. Yuna accepted their surrender, but showed no satisfaction. "Your suffering is a fraction of what you inflicted on Mars. Your fear is nothing compared to what our colonists felt when your ships appeared in our sky. But we are not you. We do not kill civilians for revenge. We want justice, not genocide." The demonstration of the quantum destabilization weapon happened on an uninhabited moon in neutral space. Representatives from 50 species were invited to watch. Dr. Yunwoo stood before them and explained the science in simple terms. "This weapon does not simply destroy matter. It destabilizes the quantum bonds that hold atoms together. The effect spreads until the entire target breaks down into energy. A single weapon could destroy a planet. A fleet of them could sterilize entire star systems." He activated the weapon. A beam of energy struck the moon's surface. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the moon began to glow. The glow spread faster and faster until the entire moon was shining like a small sun. And then it vanished, converted to pure energy in a flash that could be seen across the star system. The alien representatives stood in shocked silence. Hyunwoo continued speaking. "Humanity has 43 of these weapons. We have not used them. We will not use them unless we have no other choice. But let the galaxy understand this. We are showing restraint. We are choosing mercy. Do not mistake our mercy for weakness." The message was received. Neutral species rushed to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Former collective allies suddenly discovered they had always secretly opposed the attack on humanity. Trade agreements were offered. Defense pacts were proposed. Everyone wanted to be friends with the species that could destroy worlds, but chose not to. Ambassador Taman accepted some offers and rejected others. He was no longer the idealistic diplomat who had sought peace at any cost. He had learned that in the galaxy, strength commanded respect in ways that pleas for fairness never could. "We will accept your alliance," he told a delegation of species that had remained neutral during the war. "But understand this. We remember who helped us and who abandoned us. We remember who begged for mercy, and who celebrated our suffering. Earth does not forget. Admiral Minho returned to Earth after 6 months of campaigning. His fleets had captured 20 collective worlds, liberated a dozen enslaved species, and destroyed 4 major military bases. The collective had sued for peace 3 times. Each time, humanity had rejected their offers as insufficient. "They still don't understand," Minho told the military council. "They think this is a normal war, where you fight until both sides are tired and then make a treaty. They don't understand that we're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Defense Minister Nari nodded in agreement. "The collective must be reformed or replaced. We need a new galactic order, one where smaller species are protected, not exploited. One where might does not make right. One where what happened to us cannot happen to others." Captain Sunho's boarding teams had captured dozens of collective ships. More importantly, they had captured collective officers and commanders. These prisoners were not mistreated, but they were interrogated thoroughly. Humanity learned the collective's strategies, their weaknesses, and their internal divisions. "The collective is not as unified as they pretend," Sunho reported. 5 of the 12 species are afraid of the Vorath. 3 others have territorial disputes. They stay together because no one species can stand alone. But if we divide them, they will fall apart. Over the next year, humanity executed a campaign of political and military pressure. They offered favorable terms to collective species that broke away. They supported internal reformers who wanted to change how the collective operated. They made it clear that they were not trying to conquer the galaxy, just ensure justice and safety. One by one, species left the collective or demanded reforms. The monolithic alliance that had ruled the galaxy for centuries began to crumble. Some left peacefully, seeking alliances with Earth instead. Others were expelled for trying to maintain the old ways. The Vorath Empire collapsed entirely. Their home world was occupied by human peacekeeping forces. Their military was disbanded. Their government was replaced with one elected by their own people. It was humiliating for the proud species that had started the war, but it was not cruel. Humanity remembered what it was like to be conquered and chose to be better than their enemies. 2 years after the Battle of Earth, a new Galactic Council formed. It included humanity as a founding member and enforcer. The old rules about stronger species dominating weaker ones were abolished. New protections were established. Species that had been conquered regained their freedom, and the threat of Earth's military made sure everyone followed the new rules. Ambassador Taman chaired the first session of the new council. He looked around at the representatives of 100 species and spoke with quiet authority. "This council exists because humanity fought for it. We lost thousands of our people to show the galaxy that might does not make right. We hope we never have to fight again. But if we do, you all know now what we are capable of." The galaxy had learned its lesson. The species that had tried peace first and war only when forced had proven to be the most dangerous enemy the collective had ever faced. And the mercy they showed in victory was perhaps even more frightening than their ferocity in battle, because it meant that everything they had done could have been so much worse. 5 years after the war ended, Ambassador Taman stood in the Memorial Garden on Earth. It was a quiet place, built on the site where Geneva once stood before the collective bombardment. Thousands of names were carved into black stone walls, one for every human who died in the war. Taman came here often. He felt he owed them that much. These people had died because diplomacy failed, because the galaxy chose violence over justice, because humanity had been forced to fight when they only wanted peace. A young alien approached him carefully. She was Kelrath, one of the species humanity had liberated. She was studying at Earth's diplomatic academy, learning to be an ambassador for her people. She had been a child's slave when Commander Donghae freed her world. Now she was training to help prevent others from suffering the same fate. "Ambassador Taman," she said respectfully. "I wanted to thank you for accepting me into the program." Taman smiled gently. "You earned your place here. Your test scores were excellent. But more than that, you understand why this work matters. You've seen what happens when diplomacy fails." She looked at the memorial walls. "Do you ever regret what happened? The war, I mean. So many died." Taman was quiet for a long moment. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret every life lost. But I don't regret fighting back. The collective gave us no choice. We could surrender our freedom or fight for it. Those are not real choices." He touched one of the names on the wall. "These people died so that others could live free. So that species like yours would not suffer forever under the collective's rule. Their sacrifice meant something. That's what I tell myself when the nightmares come." Across the galaxy, the changes humanity had fought for were taking hold. The old Galactic Collective was gone, replaced by the Federated Council. This new government had strict rules. No species could be enslaved, no world could be conquered. Disputes would be resolved through arbitration, not war. And any species that violated these rules would face the Terran Defense Fleet. Admiral Minho commanded that fleet from his flagship, the TDS Retribution. The name was chosen carefully. Humanity wanted the galaxy to remember what happened when peaceful species were pushed too far. The fleet patrolled border regions, protected trade routes, and responded to distress calls from worlds under threat. Minho had aged during the war. His hair was white now, and he walked with a slight limp from an injury that never quite healed. But his mind was still sharp, and his dedication to protecting the innocent had only grown stronger. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from the Kelrath border," his communications officer reported. "Pirates are attacking a colony ship." Minho did not hesitate. "Battle stations. Maximum speed to the Kelrath border. Make sure those pirates know we're coming." The Retribution and its escort ships arrived in time. The pirates took one look at the human warships and fled. The Kelrath colony ship was damaged but intact. Its crew sent messages of gratitude, blessing the humans who had come to save them. This happened regularly now. Humanity had become the protectors of the weak, the defenders of the helpless. It was a role they had been forced into, but one they took seriously. After all, they remembered what it was like to call for help and receive none. Captain Yuna was no longer commanding warships. She had a different mission now. She trained mixed-species military forces, teaching aliens how to defend themselves using human tactics and strategy. Her academy was located on Mars, rebuilt after the collective bombardment. Standing in front of a class of students from 20 different species, Yuna explained human military philosophy. "In your cultures, war is fought according to ancient rules and traditions. You fight with honor, following codes that go back thousands of years. Humans don't do that." She pulled up tactical displays showing the Battle of Earth. "We fight to win. We use whatever works. We adapt constantly. We take tactics from our entire history and combine them in new ways. This makes us unpredictable and dangerous." A Vorath student raised his hand hesitantly. The presence of Vorath in human facilities was controversial, but Yuna believed in giving everyone a chance. "Captain, is it true that humans consider all warfare tactics acceptable?" Yuna shook her head. "No. We have limits. We don't target civilians deliberately. We don't use weapons of mass destruction unless we have no choice. We don't torture prisoners. But within those limits, we use everything: deception, surprise, overwhelming force, asymmetric tactics. Whatever gives us an advantage." She looked at the Vorath student seriously. "Your species learned this lesson the hard way. I hope others can learn it without fighting us first." Dr. Hyunwoo had become the director of the Galactic Technology Council. His job was to share human innovations with allied species while preventing dangerous technology from spreading to hostile powers. It was a delicate balance. "We're not going to make the same mistakes others made," Hyunwoo told his team. We share medical technology freely. Anyone can have our agricultural improvements, but weapons technology is carefully controlled. We verify who receives it and track how it's used. The quantum destabilization weapon remained classified, known only to humanity's closest allies and kept as a deterrent. Hyunwoo hoped it would never be used, but its existence kept potential enemies cautious. They knew humanity could destroy worlds. The fact that humans chose not to made them even more frightening. Hyunwoo also worked on peaceful projects. Human medical technology had saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Diseases that had plagued species for generations were now curable. Famines were prevented with better farming techniques. Life expectancy increased on dozens of worlds. This is what we wanted to do from the beginning, Hyunwoo said during an interview. Share our knowledge, learn from others, make life better for everyone. We had to fight a war to get the chance, but now we're doing what we always intended. Commander Donghae had become the head of the Liberated Worlds Alliance, an organization of species that humanity had freed from collective control. He worked tirelessly to help these species rebuild, develop stable governments, and defend themselves. Independence is only the first step, Donghae explained at an alliance meeting. You also need food security, economic stability, and military defense. Earth will help with all of these things, but you must also help yourselves. We can't protect everyone forever. You must become strong enough to stand on your own. The Kelrath representative stood. You freed us from slavery. You gave us weapons and training. You asked for nothing in return. Why? Donghae thought of Mars, of the bombardment, of the people who died while the galaxy watched and did nothing. Because no one should go through what we went through. Because might should not make right. Because we believe that freedom is the right of all sentient beings. And because we remember what it was like to be alone and helpless. We won't let others feel that way if we can prevent it. Defense Minister Nari had stepped down from her position, replaced by a younger officer. But she remained influential as an advisor and elder stateswoman. She had written a book about the war titled The Cost of Peace. It was required reading at military academies across friendly space. In the book, she wrote, "Peace is the natural state humanity desires. We are social beings who thrive through cooperation, but we are also survivors who will fight when necessary. The galaxy mistook our desire for peace as weakness. They learned the truth too late. We tried peace first. We will always try peace first. But if peace is rejected, we will do what we must to survive and protect those who cannot protect themselves." Captain Sunho commanded the Special Operations Division, a force that handled missions too sensitive for regular military units. His teams rescued hostages, gathered intelligence, and occasionally removed threats that could not be dealt with through conventional means. We operate in the shadows so that others can live in the light, Sunho told new recruits. The public sees the Terran Defense Fleet protecting trade routes and responding to distress calls. They don't see us preventing wars before they start. They don't see us stopping terrorists and pirates before they can hurt people. That's fine. We don't do this for glory. We do it because it needs to be done. Engineer Jiwoo had married and started a family. She still worked on advanced projects, but she also spent time teaching at universities, inspiring the next generation of engineers and scientists. She believed that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons, but their ability to learn, adapt, and innovate. Every species has something to teach us, she told her students. The Vorath are excellent shipbuilders. The Kelrath have amazing mathematical abilities. The humans are adaptable and creative. When we combine our strengths, we can solve problems that no single species could handle alone. The new diplomatic academy graduated its first class 5 years after the war. These young diplomats, both human and alien, would be responsible for maintaining the peace that had been so hard to achieve. They studied history, learning from the mistakes that led to the war. They studied diplomacy, learning how to resolve conflicts without violence. and they studied human philosophy, learning why Earth had fought so hard for a just galaxy. At the graduation ceremony, Ambassador Taman gave the keynote speech. He looked older now, his hair gray, his face lined with the stress of years spent rebuilding what war had destroyed. But his eyes still held the fierce determination that had sustained him through the darkest days. "You graduate into a galaxy that is better than the one I entered as a young diplomat," he told the students. "You will not face the exploitation and cruelty that humanity faced. The Federated Council protects the rights of all species. The strong cannot simply dominate the weak anymore." He paused, looking at each young face. "But do not become complacent. Peace must be actively maintained. Justice must be constantly defended. The moment we stop vigilating is the moment old evils creep back. You are the guardians of the new order. Your words and actions will determine whether we continue on this path or fall back into the darkness." A human student raised her hand. "Ambassador, do you think humanity will ever have to fight another war like that?" Taman considered the question carefully. "I hope not. We built the Federated Council to prevent such wars. We maintain the Terran Defense Fleet to deter aggression. We share our technology to help others defend themselves. But hope is not a strategy." He gestured to the memorial visible through the window. "Those people died because the galaxy thought we were weak. They thought our desire for peace meant we couldn't fight. Now the galaxy knows the truth. We can fight, we can win, but we would rather not. That's the message you must carry forward. Humanity will always offer peace first, but never mistake our offer of peace for inability to wage war." The Vorath homeworld had recovered from the blockade and occupation. A new government, elected by their own people, worked to repair relations with the galaxy. The new Vorath leader came to Earth on an official state visit, something that would have been unthinkable during the war. He stood before the memorial wall with Taman, reading the names of the humans who had died. "My people started this war," he said quietly. "Our arrogance and cruelty killed these people. I cannot undo that, but I can ensure my people learn from our mistakes." Taman nodded slowly. "Your old government paid for their crimes. The Vorath people were not responsible for their leaders' decisions. You have a chance to build something better. Don't waste it." The Vorath leader looked at him. "How do you forgive us? How do you work with the species that killed your people?" "I don't forget," Taman replied. "I will never forget. But I recognize that holding on to hate only creates more suffering. Your people have changed. Your government has accepted responsibility. You are working to be better. That's all we can ask." He turned to face the alien directly. "But understand this. If you or any species ever threatens the innocent again, humanity will respond. We gave the galaxy one chance to accept us peacefully. We won't give a second chance to those who abuse our mercy." As the sun set over Earth, casting long shadows across the memorial garden, Taman thought about the journey that had brought them here, from hopeful first contact to devastating war to hard-won peace. It had cost so much, but it had also taught the galaxy valuable lessons. The final inscription on the memorial wall summed it up perfectly. "We tried peace. They chose war. We became warriors so that others could live in peace. Remember us and remember why we fought." Never let this happen again. A new diplomatic ship launched from Earth's orbital station, heading for unexplored regions of space. It carried a message of friendship and cooperation. But trailing behind it, far enough to not be threatening but close enough to respond quickly, was a destroyer escort. The message was clear. Humanity would always offer peace first. They would always extend the hand of friendship. But they would never again be helpless. They would never again watch their people suffer while the galaxy did nothing. The sleeping giant had awakened, and while it hoped to never wake fully again, it remained eternally vigilant, ready to protect those who could not protect themselves. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not just the memory of their retribution, but the promise of their protection, and the hope that their example would inspire others to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. The stars waited ahead, full of unknown possibilities. Humanity moved forward into that unknown, carrying the lessons of their past and the hopes for their future. They had proven they could survive the worst the galaxy could throw at them. Now they would prove they could build something better.